Hey, Olive, Arlo, and Frank. Very raspy voice, under the weather. I think it's because of seasonal allergies, hay fever, ramp up here. And today we're going to resume in the book of Luke in chapter 16. And we're going to read a couple of things that are very, very interesting. And as you read the Bible more and more, you're going to be familiar with a lot of these things. Several of these stories are told over at least 3 of the Gospels, and I think some of them are told over 4 of them. Now, some only appear in one Gospel, like Jesus turning water to wine was in the Gospel of John, but you're going to keep reading the same stories, and sometimes they'll even seem different, and then you have to say, well, wow, did one guy get it wrong, or what's the deal? Well, Jesus had stump speeches. He was an itinerant rabbi, and a rabbi is like an itinerant pastor who goes around and preaches from place to place. So he would go and stop in some town and give a speech, and then he'd go to another town and give a speech. And so maybe the person who wrote Mark, who we know him as Mark, but we think that he got information from Peter. So maybe he didn't see it. Peter said, oh, well, this is what was said. The reason there's 4 Gospels is so that we know that there's nothing in there that's just pure BS. But anyway, these are some interesting stories, and stories with a lot to chew on. That's another thing. As you study the Bible, you're going to go, well, that doesn't make any sense. That's on purpose. God is your Father. Whether you believe that or not, He is your Father. He's the Father of all of us. And He wants to engage with His children. So when He wrote this book and sent it to us, it's all about His Son, Jesus. And Jesus even said about the Old Testament that the entire thing was written about Him. But sometimes your Father's going to say something to you that you don't understand. And then you'll go, well, I don't understand this. You can talk to your Father in heaven. Just pray. And say, God, I don't understand this. Anyway, let's just dive right in. We're going to do the parable of the clever steward. Jesus also said to the disciples, there was a rich man who was informed of accusations that his manager was wasting his assets. So the manager is a servant, but he's the servant that's in charge of his financial assets. So he called the manager and said to him, what is this I hear about you? Turn in the account of your administration, because you can no longer be my manager. He's fired. Well, everybody knew everybody in these towns. Where's he going to go to get another job? He's a manager. I was a manager, not a financial manager, but I was a manager at the Internal Revenue Service for years. Then the manager said to himself, what should I do since my master is taking my position from me? I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm too ashamed to beg. I know what to do so that when I am put out of management, people will welcome me into their homes. So he contacted his master's debtors one by one. So the people that owed his master money, he contacted them. He asked the first, "How much do you owe my master?" The man replied, 100 measures of olive oil. The manager said to him, "Take your bill, sit down quickly, and write 50. So now, none of these people know that this guy's been fired. So he's being devious. So let's see when we get to the end of this parable whether this guy is a hero or a villain. Sounds like a villain, but let's see. Then he said to another, "And how much do you owe?" And the second man replied, 100 measures of wheat. The manager said to him, "Take your bill and write 80. The master commended the dishonest manager because he acted shrewdly. Wow. For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their contemporaries than the people of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by how you use worldly wealth, so that when it runs out, you will be welcomed into the eternal homes. Now, eternal homes means into heaven. The one who is faithful in very little is also faithful in much. And the one who is dishonest in a very little, is also dishonest in much. If then you haven't been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will entrust you with the true riches? And if you haven't been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. Now this is Luke, but in Matthew, this is on the it's in the Sermon on the Mount. You cannot serve God and money. There is so much to unpack there. But this isn't about unpacking. You need to unpack it. The Pharisees, who loved money, so there's the segue, heard all this and ridiculed him. But Jesus said to them, and now, one thing you have to do when you read the Bible is you have to look at the context. And part of the context is, who is he speaking to? What did they hear? How did they hear it? Those kind of things. So he tells this story, and these people probably think that they're better than this steward. Like, well, I'm better than that guy. But then he says that about money, and they love money. So they're like, "Nah, Jesus, you're crazy, dude." But Jesus said to them, "You are the ones who justify yourselves in men's eyes, but God knows your hearts. For what is highly prized among men is utterly detestable in God's sight." The law and the prophets were in force until John. Since then, the good news of the kingdom of God has been proclaimed, and everyone is urged to enter it. But it is easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for one tiny stroke of a letter in the law to become void. Everyone who divorces his wife and marries someone else commits adultery, and the one who marries a woman divorced from her husband commits adultery. So once again, we're in, I think it's chapters 5 through 7 of Matthew, but just done a little differently. There was a rich man So he's like, once again, going to go after him. Like, there's a rich man like you, Pharisee. There was a rich man who dressed in purple and fine linen and who feasted sumptuously every day. And sumptuously means that, like a big feast. Like really good stuff and a lot of it. But at his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, whose body was covered with sores, who longed to eat what fell from the rich man's table. In addition, the dogs came and licked his sores. Like, ew. Now the poor man died and was carried by the angels to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried. So the poor man didn't say anything about his faith or anything, but he was carried by angels to, in the King James, it's to Abraham's bosom. And the rich man was also died and was buried. And in hell, so that's Hades, where the dead are gathered, while they're awaiting judgment. And in hell, as he was in torment, he looked up and saw Abraham far off with Lazarus at his side. So he called out, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue." Now he was looking out the door and watching dogs lick this guy the day before. And he didn't go like, "Hey, you want something to eat?" Because alms were a big thing in Israel, in that whole part of the world. Like, Olive, your family is Muslim, and they're very big on helping the poor and giving alms. So he wants him to dip his finger in water and cool his tongue, because I am in anguish in this fire. But Abraham said, "Child, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, and Lazarus likewise bad things." Now Abraham is the father, he's the father of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. They may argue about certain things, but he, and for me, I'm not from a direct descendant of Abraham, but I'm pretty sure that all of you are. And that's because probably people in your background are Arabs and they're descendants of Abraham. But he talks like he's there. And that's amazing when you think about that. This Lazarus goes there and Abraham's there. I don't know what you think about when you think about heaven and hell and all that, but once you read this, you're going to think different about them. Besides all this, a great chasm has been fixed between us. So a chasm is like a gap. Has been fixed between us, so that those who want to cross over from here to you cannot do so. And no one can cross from there to us. So you're stuck there. They're both in Hades. They're awaiting judgment day. But the people that are on the side that this rich guy is, they're in pain. They're in suffering already. And Lazarus, he's hanging with Abraham. So the rich man said, "Then I beg you, Father, send Lazarus to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, to warn them so that they don't come into this place of torment." So what do you think Abraham's going to say? But Abraham said, "They have Moses and the prophets. They must respond to them." They have the Bible. They have the Bible just like you do. You have more of the Bible than they do. So you have more reasons to believe and get it right. They have Moses and the prophets. They must respond to them. Then the rich man said, "No, Father Abraham, but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent." He replied to him, "If they do not respond to Moses and the prophets, they will not be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead." Now, it's interesting because there is a guy named Lazarus. I don't think it's the same guy, because I don't think he was poor, who dies and Jesus raises him from the dead. But also, you know who else was raised from the dead? Jesus. And a lot of the same people that didn't believe Moses wound up not believing Jesus. Anyway, on to chapter 17. Peace out.